My name is Shawn Healy. I work for the McCormick Foundation in Chicago, and you guys have heard me the last couple of years talk a lot about civics. My personal passion is, of course, civics, but I'm a political geek too, and actually study political science. So the person that was supposed to do this session, actually a different session, couldn't make it. So Emily said, "What can we do?" So, well, I'm actually doing this session tomorrow at the Illinois Council for the Social Studies fall conference. So I can pinch hit, and so that's what this session is. On your way out today, we have in the room we've put together some posters that really walk you through the whole process. And of course, we're getting toward the end, but it leads all the way through inauguration day. So something nice maybe for your classroom wall, and we brought a bunch of them, and obviously they expire in a few weeks. So take as many as you'd like, or maybe it's just a good artifact for this campaign. But my topic today is really the way new media has intermeshed with modern campaigns, and we'll look specifically at the presidential campaign, and in particular a channel for young people to engage with the process, and for campaigns to engage with young people. So I'm going to hit you over the head with lots of data as we try to understand this, and then end with some real practical examples of what the campaigns are actually doing to leverage this new media. And I want to start by just setting the context a little bit. And this is an infographic that was put out. In fact, let me pass these out. It's my bibliography that I'm going to reference things from. But there's an infographic that was just put out that really frames up the impact of social media on the cycle. So I'm going to borrow a couple segments from this infographic just to frame this up. One, we look at kind of the evolution of media and campaigns, and of course FDR was the first to leverage radio, not so much in the campaign, but through his fireside chats, mastered the radio domain. John F. Kennedy, of course, was the first to do a televised presidential press conference that over the State Department. And of course, the famous debate between him and Nixon that took place in Chicago actually really brought the TV age to presidential politics. Some would suggest that Ronald Reagan was actually the first candidate to master TV as a domain. And then, of course, political scientists are still writing books about this, the 08 campaign and the way in which the Obama campaign leveraged social media to really engage young people at a level we haven't seen since 18-year-olds got the right to vote. So was certainly a high watermark. And what we'll see here is actually that that was just kind of the starting point in 2008, that it's really taken off since. But this campaign in particular has just done a great job of leveraging this. The Republicans have closed the gap a little bit in this cycle, but you'll see some of the numbers. The Obama campaign still has a pretty significant edge in terms of leveraging social media to engage young people. So one, I'll start with the notion of why we're doing this stuff. Elections as a teachable moment. I think you guys are here, you understand that, but walk through just a couple of things that we've been talked about already this morning. Then get into what youth engagement actually looks like. I'm going to reference a report that came out just a couple of months ago called Participatory Politics, and this is some ongoing research that's been supported by the MacArthur Foundation, which is Chicago-based, and they look at the way new media has influenced young people and their participation in politics, and they call it participatory politics. So we'll look at some of that research, and then, as I said, some examples from the actual campaign to close to illustrate this. And you got a copy this morning of the Illinois Civic Blueprint. We define what engagement is. It certainly is, there's a political component that fits so well in campaigns in terms of building political knowledge, skills, and participation, but also these attitudes that I have a duty to participate in these commitments to our broader community that frankly make our cities and our state and our country civically healthy. We talked all morning about the proven civic learning practices, and I gave a presentation earlier this year at the Illinois Council for the Social Studies Conference down in Bloomington, and talked about how teaching about the election fits quite well with these practices. So I used examples of programs that are available throughout the state to teach about elections. And you guys are doing these things. I heard some examples this morning as you went through what you're doing with your students in your schools. defining engagement, and of course, this is always the crux, like what do we mean by young people being politically and civically engaged? And this is actually, I love this slide because I think it's a very expansive definition of engagement, and it gets to a lot of the new means by which young people and Americans more generally engage in the process. And it's from a book called A New Engagement, written by a number of political scientists. And they kind of parse it out a little bit. So they say, okay, there's involvement in the community, and it takes various forms. How about this one? Participation in a fundraising run, walk, or ride. How many of you guys do that type of thing? The age-old ones, the political indicators. So are you voting? Are you wearing campaign collateral? Are you working at a phone bank for a candidate? These notions of public voice, which I think are also very interesting, even gets into the kind of the consumerism that's pretty rampant now. So think going green. We purposely buy products because they're green, or maybe we don't buy. In fact, there's water bottles, for instance, in Chicago are scorned because they're bad for the environment, right? So there's purposeful buying or boycotting of products for political reasons.
Think Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I tried. There was a threat to shut it down in our fair town, which wouldn't have made me happy. That's good stuff. And then the cognitive engagement with the process, which is also kind of an age-old thing, particularly attentiveness to news media, which we're going to address as we talk about tweeting the election or media in the election. This is another handout. Maybe it's hard to see on the slide. There's an organization at Tufts University, and the acronym's easy. It's called CIRCLE. It's a Center for Information and Research on Civic Learning and Engagement. They're just a phenomenal organization. They study young people's political engagement. What they did in this little chart I gave you was looked at the ways in which young people get involved civically, and they looked at it in the context of the 2008 presidential election, which, as we said, in a lot of ways is a high watermark, at least in recent times. And then 2010, where we actually saw a tremendous drop-off in terms of the youth participation, which we typically see during midterm cycles, and it was just a big deal because it had been so good in 08, but it was actually pretty much on par with past performance in terms of 2010. And what they do, they parse it out a little bit. So they look at voting, volunteering, donating, discussing politics, and communicating via the internet as means of engaging. So pulling on some of those indicators I just talked about in the last slide. And they find that some people are pretty politically engaged, and this was true of 08 or 2010. Some people are broadly engaged, so they're involved in all of these different metrics. And then there's a lot of folks, a lot of young people who are what they call civically alienated. And then if you look at 08, there were a number of people that just voted. They weren't involved in other capacities. There were folks that were actually highly engaged, cognitively engaged, but didn't end up voting. And then there were folks who were pretty politically marginalized, so maybe not even registered to vote. And that is a big deal in a state like Illinois, where the deadline was Tuesday, if I remember correctly. And if you just decided right now, I should probably start paying attention to the contest, you're probably left out. I always tell people we don't have a voter turnout problem in America. We have a voter registration problem in America. If you look at the percentage of our registered voters that turn out, they're on par with other Western democracies. But lots of barriers to being involved. And I come from the state of Wisconsin, where up until recently you could show up on election day and vote as long as you had a utility bill. They made that a little tougher now, but I think Minnesota still has that. And to me it's no shock, and there's lots of things that go into this, but it's no shock that if you look at usually the top few states in terms of turnout, Wisconsin and Minnesota are always right there. New Hampshire is usually in that mix. You saw this slide earlier where I talked about engagement in Illinois, where on some measures we're doing quite poorly. These are our state ranks as it relates to the rest of the country. Most were kind of in the middle, and there's a couple like discussing politics we're doing quite well. So specific to the context of this campaign, this is the thing that I think we can all sense, but there's actually data to prove it, that youth engagement in the current election is down significantly in comparison to 2008. This comes from the Pew Research Center. So given quite a bit of thought to this election, you can see particularly amongst young people it's dropped off tremendously, not so much amongst older folks, but across the board, people giving less thought to this election. The irony here, right, is the polling data suggesting this is a closer election than the last one. Follow the campaign news closely. Once again, tremendous drop-off amongst younger people, but almost across the board. And then this definitely planning on voting this year. And once again, we see drop-off, pretty significant drop-off amongst young people, actually older folks plan to vote. And this has huge consequences, because if you look at the trajectory of voters, young people in the last cycle went decisively to Obama, and older folks decisively to McCain, and the polls seem to bear that out again in this cycle too. So it's not so much how, who people favor so much as actually who gets out and votes on election day, obviously. And then this is just kind of an aggregate, but it shows how much youth engagement is down across the board, and even amongst all voters, as we talk about this cycle. And then a question they ask about voter registration. The question, are you absolutely certain that you're registered to vote? Some people think they are, lots of people move, et cetera, right? But only half of young people, millennials, are sure they're registered to vote. And as we know, particularly in Illinois, that's a barrier. And that's quite different than older folks who are pretty certain they're registered to vote, and in many cases will. Where we get information. Media is of course always been the source for one of the prominent sources of information about campaigns. And what we know is there's been tremendous drop-off amongst traditional news sources in terms of information about politics. And we also know that the internet is increasingly a source for this information. So drop-off amongst all sources, with the exception of the internet. Of course, print has probably been hit hardest, and this parses it out a little more. And some of the really surprising ones in recent years are the drop-off in attention to local news. Network news was bleeding at about 1 million viewers a year. That's plateaued now a little bit. Notice cable, has its niche audience, but not all that widespread. And you get down to the stuff I watch, the Sunday morning shows. It's a small audience. In terms of readership of newspapers and periodicals, once again, a pretty significant drop-off. But then the increase we see, of course, is folks who are going online for information. So that's where the growth is. And this is a lot more data than we probably need, but major points here. There are huge differences as we look by age. So there's a ton of evidence actually that we now have two generations. So my generation, the Generation X, and millennials who are basically news illiterate. For the most part, avoid news, particularly through traditional platforms. And the upside is that there is quite a bit of news consumption amongst young people on digital platforms. The other piece I think that's striking is that we're seeing an increase in digital news consumption across the population, so amongst our older age cohorts. The other thing that's a bit disconcerting, I think, is the number of people who report that they don't consume any news. So almost 3 in 10 young people are basically not accessing any news at all on a daily basis, according to this survey. The other thing we know is that the landscape has perhaps retreated, went back to the future in the sense that our programming is much more ideological in nature, and actually even appeals to different age audiences. And it's a little fuzzy there, I can make this better, but it's a little better. So what you'll see here is the green represents kind of the median here. So above this line is a younger audience, below this line is an older audience. And notice that the comedy shows are actually the top source of news for young people, and then interesting ones like the New York Times and Wall Street Journal. And then as you go down, what's interesting to me is some of the more ideological programming like Rachel Maddow and O'Reilly and Hannity are actually those lean oldest in terms of news consumption population. And then here's the overlay with ideology. So above this line is Republican, excuse me. Above this line is conservative. So these audiences, and it's no shock at the top with Hannity and Limbaugh and O'Reilly and Fox News, right? Pretty consistent there. And then on the bottom, it's interesting, the comedy shows, particularly on ideological orientation, fall very much on the liberal lines, and Rachel Maddow tops it off for both counts in terms of polarization of audiences. There's quite a bit of evidence that we enter echo chambers. We pursue news that kind of confirms our predispositions politically, and that might not be all that healthy for democracy and discourse. So I want to turn next to what this participation looks like for young people as we talk about online. And the thing we know is young people, of course, are online. We'll look at some of the data pretty universally. And for the most part, they're not doing political things online, right? They're doing, and many of us are, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. And most of the activity that we do is what we call more friendship driven. So it's ties among friends, it's ties among family, and there's not necessarily a downside to it from a perspective of civic engagement, because the argument goes that you need these deep ties, these thick ties, to build on participation. So these networks are actually really healthy for democracy. And then the other side of the coin, what they call interest-driven participation, and you'll notice this isn't as frequent. It's hard to see these lines, but posting a comment or critique of someone else's media, creating your own media, participating in a game community, using the internet to organize all kinds of forms of interest-driven participation. Notice we haven't gotten to the political piece yet, but this is really the impetus for political participation online. And what this report lays out are what they call participatory political activities. So things you can do leveraging new media in the current information age to get involved. So some of it's electronic in nature, some of it is very in-person and hands-on. And you'll notice some of the examples. So forwarding funny videos or cartoons about a political candidate, quite common. Forwarding or posting someone else's political commentary, quite common, but it's still, fewer than 1 in 5 people are doing most of these things. So it's important, it's happening, it's not everybody. This gets into the types of political activities amongst young people, so it mirrors that circle data that I was showing earlier. Notice there's a huge 1 in 3 young people totally disengaged, and then some engage very traditionally, and then some involved only in participatory acts, which is only a small sliver. And the reality is most young people are engaging in both traditional capacities and participatory capacities. So they're marrying those two things. And then this one gets into online and offline types of participatory acts. And once again, majority actually aren't engaged in either, but the folks who are engaged are often engaged in both online and offline.
Can I ask you a question? So does it all come back to just that it's because they don't feel like it has affected them yet? Or I teach freshman government, and so does Justin, and so that's always my question to the kids is, why are the young people in America not voting? Why are they not participating? How can I get you to participate more, right?
Right.
And it all comes back to their answer is, well, it's not affecting me. And I understand how, I didn't become civically oriented until I became older, until I saw how it truly is affecting me.
Sure.
So is that the main reason? I mean, is that what the bottom line is here?
Well, so it's a tough question. One because I think it's kind of chicken and egg type of thing where we have a politics that for the most part has discounted young people, and it doesn't speak to them. So if you watch the debates, often they're about Social Security and Medicare and things of that nature. And yeah, those issues are actually really important to young people because one, they're going to pay for them. Two, they might not get them when they get there, right? So these issues are important. But
don't you think they feel like that's so far off?
Exactly, yeah. Heck, I feel like it's a long ways off. But so I think there's that piece. And our political institutions haven't done a great job of bringing young people in. The Obama campaign was actually the exception.
Yes.
And now we're seeing evidence that it kind of is just the Obama campaign, right? It wasn't even the Democratic Party, where historically our parties did a better job of this, unions did this, religious institutions did this, and we've seen a tremendous drying up of that civic space. So it's not happening. But I guess the point I'd like to get to is that I think these online portals are potentially kind of a gateway drug, so to speak, to engagement, where young people are engaging, might not even know it. So I'm on the board of a local youth media organization in Chicago, and we have young people doing web design. We have them going out in the community and documenting local political issues, and then it goes on the local access channel. I think that's civic engagement. We don't call it that. I think that's civic engagement. So I think some of these new channels are great gateway drugs to that, and I don't know that we're appreciating them as much as we can.
That's what I found in my classes is the participation activities. It's what is changing it over the last 3 years. Getting them online, every one of them has to take their surveys on are you liberal, are you conservative, and all of a sudden from that they're asking, wait a minute, what's euthanasia, coach? And then I'm like explaining, okay, well that's mercy killing, or how you feel like that. And then, well, I don't agree with that, or I don't agree with that. And then it stems in another site we go to every week in mine is Kaggle.com. It's C-A-G-L-E. It's every political cartoon chronicled throughout the whole world. And you can just pull them up and say, so I just keep throwing up cartoons and say, okay, it could be Obama versus Romney, it's this, what do you think of this? Here's what are they talking about? What issue is underlying this? And the kids see the humor in it, but then they're all of a sudden, oh wait a minute, I never thought about that tax code issue. That's how it is. And that's when we use in ours every day, plus bringing in the speakers. You have to, I let them generate the questions. When I had the U.S. congressman, I didn't ask a question. They ask all the questions.
Can I ask what age?
I have 11th to 12th graders. 11th to 12th graders. Yeah, but with freshmen, we have a current events class that follows along the same suit every day. We're bringing out current events and that, letting them know to just try to steamroll it. And 90% of our stuff's the internet. And with all this, because we have to, because they are light years ahead of everything we're getting from our textbooks now. So.
Oh yeah. We were talking about that earlier. I think that's one of our problems. Is our civics class at O'Fallon High School it's a freshman required class. That when you're 14, you're trying to get them politically involved in something that they can't even vote for 4 more years. To me, seems
it's tougher. Yeah.
It's really hard.
And it's always been the challenge of this work is there often is a gap between what we're teaching about and that opportunity to engage. But there are opportunities to engage beyond voting. So I think that's important to emphasize. Also, like, you can work on a campaign before you're 18, you know.
Right.
The actual vote, obviously not.
It's just hard. The maturity level is.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, and you know, there's the research suggests actually the best time to teach civics or government is senior year because of the proximity to their participation. But the downside of that is 30% kids aren't graduating high school. So if you offer a freshman year, more kids are probably getting the class, which is there's value in that. So we could have a long argument about that too. But you know, there's a piece, I don't know how many of you get Social Education magazine from National Council for the Social Studies, but the whole issue, you know, the title is High Season for Civics, and it's loaded with stuff. In fact, I'll make a couple more references to this. In fact, I'll pass it around. On voting, and one piece they have in there is on using The Daily Show as a means to teach about politics, and because we saw that the audience amongst young people is huge. And what the research has shown is young people enjoy the program, the Colbert Report, the Daily Show, because of the quick laugh, the easy laugh, and they actually don't get some of the more embedded satirical political humor, which is quite sophisticated. So it actually is a teachable moment. So there's a whole article on how to leverage this. And it reminds me when I first got into teaching, the sessions you go to, the conferences, were how to use The Simpsons and Seinfeld and stuff like that to teach about this. But
is it always school appropriate though?
They address that because they put so the article uses like the monologue at the start of the show. Right. I don't watch it, so I've watched it a couple times, so I don't know it that well. But apparently it's typically an 8 to 9 minute monologue. They put it online, so they recommend, like as a teacher, sometimes there's crude humor, stuff like that, so preview it before you put it up in class. But I said often it actually works quite well. And then there's of course always the accusations that there's liberal bias and stuff like that. This article gets into that. So another good way, kind of meeting kids where they're at. The other thing I would recommend, particularly for 9th graders, and some of you are familiar with this, is the iCivics site. You guys seen this? So it's a project that Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. It's called, just go to iCivics.org, and it's actually geared toward 9th graders. And they literally have games, interactive games, covering every aspect now of American government. And they even have some that facilitate participation. So it's really cool. And the games are designed by educational gamers. There's points, so you can even assess this stuff. There's lesson plans tied to these games. There's even PowerPoint slideshows they offer. And then they've taken each of these lessons and aligned them with state standards. So it's a fantastic website. It's all free for teachers. So I think that's a great way to get young people involved, and this presentation doesn't really touch on that. So a bit more about the participatory politics piece. We see there's actually a relationship between folks who are doing lots of participatory acts and interest in political issues. Well, that's not a huge surprise. We also see that the more frequent people are in getting engaged in participatory politics, they have much higher efficacy, so they feel they have more capacity and more able to get involved and make a difference. I put this table up here because it's interesting. For a long time, maybe the last 15 years, we've been talking about the digital divide in America, and how, once again, if you look at economics and you look at race, that the poor and non-white populations have less access to technology. It's actually not really true anymore, which is a good thing, right? So still some issues in terms of having a desktop or laptop computer at home, but what's striking is, particularly as we look at handheld devices, we look at gaming devices that access the internet, actually our non-white populations have more access and are using it. You'll see some graphs I put up in a minute, using it quite ubiquitously to access political information. So the digital divide has mostly closed. It's a good thing. In terms of participatory acts, these are a little tough to see, but once again by race. So taking part in protests or demonstrations, participating in a boycott, boycotting, participating in an event where young people express political views, and been active in a group that work to address social and political issues. You'll see there are differences by race. Most of these white young people outperform non-white young people. What's interesting is that when we get into participatory political acts, so starting or joining a political group on Facebook, for instance, or forwarding in somebody else's political commentary, these gaps close, and in some cases, non-white young people are actually outperforming white young people. So there is a leveling, there is an equity online that doesn't exist in our more formal political channels. This is a bit of a rehash, but it shows where young people are getting their news. TV and radio still being the most prominent, even amongst young people. Tweets, second, Facebook posts, and you see blogs, YouTube posts. So new media channels certainly open, but as are traditional media channels. And then you see those about a little more than a quarter using only traditional media, very small percentage using only participatory media, and you'll see almost a majority using both traditional and new media channels. And then, of course, 1 in 5 or so not consuming political news at all, which is, of course, a big concern. So a couple more things about social networking before we get into some concrete examples. And this relates to the whole population. I pulled this from a recent Pew study. And it shows, as we broaden the population and talk about all voters or all Americans, it's pretty infrequent for us to be doing political things on social networking sites, but still pretty significant, particularly as we talk about news consumption. So debating, discussing political issues. So for the most part, people are going on these social networking sites and avoiding politics. But in some cases it confronts them altogether. This piece is interesting. It parses it out a bit by party. And it seems like Democrats are much more apt to leverage new media to engage in politics than are Republicans. Now I guess age has something to do with this. So one of the best predictors now if you're a Republican is if you're older. And if you're a Democrat, you're younger. So might have something to do with this. And then the other interesting piece, as we look more broadly at the population, there is more equity in terms of participation as we look at race and social networking sites. And then this is amongst young people, where young people more apt than the general social networking population to use these channels to participate politically. And the other interesting piece, talking about becoming more involved because they've interacted on social networking sites. Once again, Democrats and liberals much more likely to report the affirmative on that count. And then this one's really interesting. I don't think it necessarily lines up, but the folks who report they actually put political information up on Facebook or on Twitter, and then the folks who say they actually encounter it. So what this tells me is there's actually maybe a few of our friends that are putting a lot of stuff up, or these folks aren't being completely honest about, but it seems like folks are saying as they go on social networking sites, they're actually encountering quite a bit of political information, but not generating as much of it themselves. And as we look at the folks who actually go on social networking sites, we see folks report quite a bit of impact in terms of their political involvement. So helping them to keep up with political news, recruiting people to get involved on political issues that matter, debating or discussing these issues, finding other people who share views. So they are pretty significant channels, very often or sometimes, almost always the case, for folks who are on these social networking sites. So back to this infographic, and it's hard to see some of these things, but if we go back to 2008, where the Obama campaign supposedly reinvented how you use new media, in a lot of ways they did, but we have to remember that not even a quarter of Americans were using social networking sites 4 years ago. Only 3% of Americans signed up to be friends of candidates. 7% received campaign information from websites. This is only 4 years ago, and it sounds like ancient history, right? 24% learned about candidates or the campaign from the internet in 2008, which was double from 2004, 13%. And of course, we know how powerfully the Obama campaign used channels like YouTube, and this particular stat is striking to me. 14.5 million hours of viewing of Obama campaign videos, and the equivalent in terms of campaign spending, if you put this on TV, $47 million. So it's very much equivalent of paid media, which is really powerful. That's driving the cost of our campaigns now, right? The other thing I think is striking, and we'll look at some examples, is many times these videos are put up on YouTube and they create a buzz, so much so that the mainstream news outlets pick them up and essentially give them free media. So it's actually a really powerful kind of new media, old media triage there. A bit more on stats. So this just shows you the growth of Facebook and Twitter users. Notice Facebook still dwarfs Twitter, but Twitter has grown exponentially also since 2008. So quite a dramatic, and this is worldwide growth. So these numbers, of course, exceed the population of the United States. And then if you look at, compare the candidates, of course, Obama, the same candidate, but the number of supporters, this is Facebook supporters, so growth of 14 times. Of course, it's changed. This piece is Twitter, so only 112,000 Twitter followers. Now he's almost to 20 million. And then the subscribers on YouTube, which is basically doubled. McCain just kind of dipped his toe in the water. But you'll see Romney quite significantly greater number of supporters, but only about a quarter of Obama's as we look at Facebook. The Twitter followers, almost 1 in 20, but still obviously McCain only had 4,603 Twitter followers, and he's actually since become a quite prolific tweeter, actually kind of a fun guy to follow. And then subscribers, actually Romney is trailing him, trailing McCain, at least according to this infographic on YouTube. This looks at tweets per day. The Obama campaign actually puts out about 29 tweets per day. You might remember a picture I put up earlier this morning where Obama actually, as president, presided over the first presidential Twitter town hall in 2011. Romney's, as they say up here, is the first campaign to actually buy hashtag for his campaign through Twitter. See the likes on Facebook a day. Romney's actually outpacing Obama, but of course he has a long way to go. Obama's been building this for quite a long time, though. And then this is interesting, looking specifically just at the donors to the Obama campaign. But as you look at folks who are as fans and friends on Facebook, they tend to be younger in terms of generating campaign donations. So it certainly is a source, and we'll look at some of the examples of the pages, but a source for campaign donations. So this is a screenshot of Obama's Facebook page. You'll notice for each of the campaigns, there's photos, there's an opportunity to donate money, there's an opportunity to purchase merchandise, and then in the case of the Obama campaign, really pushing voter registration. I'll show you the portal they use for that in just a second. Romney campaign looks very similar. one piece I think that stood out to me, and this is more of the traditional form of politicking, but the ground game for the Romney campaign is certainly stronger than McCain's was. So, and what I've read is if it's a 2 or 3% contest, a gap between those two, things like the ground game can matter quite a bit. And this is one I just pulled from my home state, but you can see the voter contacts, phone calls, door-to-door canvassing up quite significantly in Wisconsin. That's something they're putting out through Facebook. This is Eric Fernstrom. He's the chief strategist for the Romney campaign and a pretty prolific tweeter. And I gave you a list of resources on the back. I have a number of Twitter handles that I follow to learn about the process. I think it's quite fun, but it's really interesting to see these strategists tweet one another, and a lot of the debates of the campaign happen on the tweet deck now. And you see some of these evidence from Fairstrom. Axelrod is, of course, his counterpart in the Obama campaign, and you can see him here tweaking Chris Christie's prediction about the debate, which was actually pretty accurate, and them trying to tamp down expectations.
I'm not a tweeter, so help me with it.
Yeah.
I know my students are, and even I had a student in class say, "Oh, I tweeted Obama the other day," right? So, okay, so they are actually having strategists put out these tweets for them, right?
Yes.
I mean, this is very.
Well, so these are the strategists, but Obama, you can follow President Obama. He's not doing those tweets,
right.
but
it's very thought out.
Very
this
much
is
so.
Not,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. And it's cool. It's 140 characters, so it's bite-sized. This is how our young people think. I would encourage you tonight, as the debates on. I have so much. I think the most fun thing to follow on Twitter are these debates. In fact, last Wednesday was the most tweeted political event in history.
Yep.
Because you get instant reaction, then you get fact checks. I mean, it's just.
Is it like Facebook there where you have to get friends, or you can?
You follow people, so you can follow anybody you want. They can follow you. If you don't put many things up, most people won't follow you. If you follow someone, people will reciprocate. But yeah, for me, it's more just listening in on conversations, and it's really neat politically. There's all kinds of other niche communities. There's an academic strain. There's certainly a celebrity culture. That's where most of our young people are, as we talk about Twitter. But this is kind of the back end strategy that's a lot of fun. Of course, we talked about this earlier. YouTube being a channel for campaign ads, and we saw how prolific. What was it? Obama campaigns put 4 or so of these a day. This is an example of a video geared toward women, which Obama has been doing quite well, although the polls of the last week show some closing amongst women. A number of celebrities, this is Beyonce, talking about why they're supporting the president in his re-election bid. And this is more of a contrast ad on the Romney YouTube channel, but it talks about some of the deficit and debt spending that's occurred over the last 4 years. But certainly a great way to get these messages out, and you don't have to pay the big prices of putting these on TV. Of course, they're doing that too, but we don't get to see a lot of that in Illinois. I guess if you're close to St. Louis, there's a little bit, but actually Missouri's not that hotly contested this cycle either. So
have you seen the YouTube Chuck Norris?
I've seen him before, yeah.
The Chuck Norris video endorsing Romney?
No, I didn't see that.
Oh, you have to go on that one. That's you've got to put it on for your classes.
There you go.
It is absolutely fantastic. He says Obama will lead us into 1,000 years of evil darkness. Chuck Norris and his wife speaking on behalf of the evangelical Christians. My kids ate it up.
And the last, the 08 phenom was Obama Girl. If you guys have ever seen that, but it was a video about how she was in love with Obama. Of course, apps are pretty prolific now for the folks of us that have handheld devices. These actually are pictures I took from my own device. And there's an app for both campaigns. The Obama campaigns is actually much more sophisticated. So these apps are a good source for information about the campaigns. Of course, you can donate. This is the piece that's really fascinating. So the Democrats have a software called Vote Builder, and it's basically their database of voters. And what this allows you to do, for any of you who've ever done door-to-door canvassing, trying to get the vote out, you can actually pull this app up. It knows where you are, and it can tell you what doors to knock on, and then the survey is actually embedded in there. And so you can facilitate this without going into a field office. without any staff directing you. It's quite sophisticated. So you see registering voters, the canvassing, and becoming a volunteer, all facilitated through an app on the phone. Registering to vote, of course, you can do this now online. The Obama website, the app, they facilitate that. This is brand new for this cycle. There's a company called Mobile Commons, and they basically run a text messaging service. And text messaging is actually much more effective in reaching people than email. Like a good email open rate is about 20%. So you send an email promoting something, you're lucky if 20% of people open it. Text messaging is well over 90%. And this organization has leveraged this quite well. They serve, for the most part, left-leaning organizations. There's a great service they offer called Do Something, and it's geared toward young people and actually facilitating local civic engagement. So that's one thing they service. But in the context of this campaign, they've set up the prospect of doing text donations to the Obama campaign, and you don't need to provide your credit card. So they actually work through the phone companies and just part of your phone bill then. And you can text $50 a time, and over the cycle, $200 total. So a great source for small donations. If you look at where people are getting their money. These are screenshots from the Romney app. It's actually two different apps. They do many of the same things, not so much the door-to-door canvassing, but I'll get to how the conservatives have narrowed that also. You can learn about issues. I typed in the closest local events. It looks like you have to go to Iowa if you want to see the candidates. So unless you want to go to a fundraiser in Chicago, pretty much not. And those are invite only, of course. And then there is this site, which is kind of interesting, where you can kind of you can make your own photo with Mitt Romney of yourself. So kind of an interesting app. He also used an app to announce Paul Ryan as his running mate. It was just a good way to get data on people. Problem was the media had a hold of that a few hours before they announced it through the app. I think the same thing happened in Obama in 2008. He texted out Biden and the media was already all over it. So I said conservatives are closing the gap. And it's not so much through the Romney campaign, but it's through some of these nonprofit organizations that are out there. One of them is called Americans for Prosperity. They have an Illinois chapter. You can see a lot of their work is not targeted on Illinois. It's in the swing states. And they're doing work in both the presidential cycle and then down the ballot and some Senate, House races, even state House races. But you see the title of their tour very much targeting the president. And they have a quite sophisticated app on their own phones that guides the same type of door-to-door work that the Obama campaign is doing. So conservatives are doing this, but it's not so much through the formal campaign, but through other organizations. This organization called Crossroads GPS, and it's actually an offshoot of Karl Rove's organization, and it focuses specifically on young people. Really fascinating story about this group. So you can micro-target advertising now to the point of not just a city, but even points within the city. So a story about this organization, there's a big music festival in Chicago every summer that literally destroys Grant Park. It's called Lollapalooza. And the Saturday this year was in August. There's this terrible storm that came through. I mean, impressive storm. And so you have hundreds of thousands of young people and like nowhere to go. So they're retreating everywhere. So what happened was that a lot of folks, of course, look at weather on their iPhone. And so on the weather app, they were able to advertise. And as they opened the weather app, it said, Obama is failing. And so this very much is a media-savvy campaign focusing on young people and really trying to win back young people. The Obama campaign won young people basically 3-1 over McCain. And then I would suggest there are great channels outside of the echo chamber. So where do we get real information outside of the enclaves of the campaigns and even some of the media that's pretty ideological? The Annenberg Foundation has produced a couple of great websites. You heard a lot about fact check after Paul Ryan's speech at the Republican National Convention, but you'll see that they do a good job of dissecting what our candidates are saying across both sides of the aisle. So quite sophisticated, and of course debate nights are a big night for them as they dissect some of the claims that are put forth. And there's a companion website that they've just put up called Fact Check, and it's a little bit tough for me to talk about what the distinction between these is, but they basically call it a media literacy, or excuse me, an election literacy site. And what's really cool, I think, for teachers, and there's actually an article about this in this social education magazine, but they have this whole exercise, would Lincoln be elected today, given the current media cycle and the things they might say or that he said and they might spin. So it's a really fascinating lesson plan, I think, to get into to evaluating information in the context of the campaign. Now, one of my favorites, money in politics, of course, is ubiquitous. And we're having evidence now that the promise of the Obama campaign to raise $1 billion is probably going to happen. So the first $1 billion candidate in American history. This is the most recent reporting put up by a site called Open Secrets. And you can look at fundraising for candidates for other levels of offices. So if you're interested in the 12th congressional race from around here, you can look at what the two candidates have raised, what they've spent, what their debts are, what type of cash they have on hand. So from the perspective of campaigns, the presidential campaigns, Obama has significantly outraised Romney, significantly outspent him, and that's a huge deal, and then still has more cash on hand. So that looks like really bad news for Romney. I should say that conservative groups, particularly the super PACs, are considerably outraising and outspending the liberal super PACs, so there's probably some equivalence there. Some on the left fear even that they'll blow this Obama money out of the water. So,
You mean, and that's still to come?
well, I mean, it's coming now. I mean, we're in this last month is it's right.
The super PACs for Romney are coming?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. But I mean, once again, now you're not going to see a lot of Illinois. So,
well, no, it's no use.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you seen the new app that I have it at school, my partner who I teach with? It's an app, and when a political commercial comes on, you hold it up. It's like Shazam, and then it listens to the commercial, and then you turn it, and it shows you who paid for it, how much money they have in their coffer, and how much money they're willing to spend. So we did it, hold it up, and then boom, it came right back, and of course it was American for Prosperity, and it said boom, it showed you who was underwriting all of these.
And who does the app?
I don't. It was on his iPhone. I don't know which one. I can't think of it right now, but it was.
That's interesting.
And yeah, so it's really a good app. It lets you know who's out there backing who. So.
There's a guy, Ken Goldstein, that does really good evaluation of campaign ads, and he was at my alma mater, University of Wisconsin, but now I think he runs this outfit out of New York. So I wonder if that's
might be him,
doing it. And this breaks down where they're getting their money. Notice Obama does a much better job with small donors than Romney does. The other piece that's really interesting at this point in the cycle is both candidates not only raise money for themselves, but also for their parties. And you can raise a lot more money for your parties at this point of the cycle. And Obama's had a big advantage for a long time because it took Romney a while to wrap up the Republican nomination. But certainly closing in that sense. Very limited candidate self-financing. Notice this is the first campaign in the modern era, so since post-Watergate, where neither campaign is taking money in the general election to fund their campaign. So McCain actually took it back in 08. And so Obama was the first to break out of that mold in 08, and now they both did in this cycle. So the conclusion that the current presidential campaign finance structure is broken is probably right. And it doesn't seem like there's a lot of political will right now to change that. Lots of interesting information. This is actually just the top sources of campaign contributions for the candidates. Obama's is interesting because you kind of have academia, you got the tech sector, and then of course government employees. And then Romney's pretty much universally the finance sector in terms. You can get much more sophisticated analysis of where they're getting their money. So that's a quick look of technology in the campaign, the way young people are using it to engage, and the way campaigns are using it to engage young people. And then I think some ways that we can learn more about the process and kind of pull the veil back. Questions or comments?
Was Bain Capital, is that even still around? Or
It is still around.
why is it not on that list?
It's probably just not top 5.
Really? That's surprising.
Yeah, I don't know where it is on the list, but yeah, it's not top 5.
I didn't know if they were bought out by the
No, I mean, I think those firms are probably just bigger. So, yeah. When you give a donation, you have to put your employer, so that's where they're getting that information. So it's not the firms themselves giving them money, but good vehicles for it.
Because if the US government was actually giving
Right.
$400,000, there's some people who would be a little angry on that one.
Right. You can also get zip codes, so like where actually they do by states in here, but what states are most prolific. Illinois is usually in that mix. It is for Obama, of course, but Romney's raised a lot of money here too. Any questions? Yes.
So I'm sorry, I had another meeting, so I missed the beginning. Did you talk about the changing dynamics of kind of youth media literacy
Yeah.
with the speed of, and so have there been effective strategies in pedagogy of youth media literacy where I mean, things are changing, things are changing daily, right? So before, everyone, there's the famous Dukakis and the tank ad, and we all looked at that and talked about that, man. But I mean, now that it's a one-day cycle for a lot of these
Yeah. I mean, I think the best example I gave was kind of the micro-targeting where they targeted kids at a Lollapalooza concert in Chicago. So just getting to that level of sophistication and the data that's now collected. In fact, there's an article that is referenced in your bibliography that was put in the Sun-Times by a local Chicago political science professor, and just the data that these apps are collecting on us, and like the Obama's app, for instance, allows them to access our photos. So it's kind of scary, and not that they would do this, but basically the disclaimers allow them to, and there's some scary things for the Romney apps too. But it's pretty amazing. So the types of things that campaigns used to have to pay a ton of information to get, nowadays we're willingly giving them.
Well, they get through Facebook.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They're getting our demographics through Facebook.
Absolutely. Right.
Makes life a lot easier for them.
It does. Yeah, it does. Final questions or comments? Well, thank you. I think we're heading back to the main room
back
to
to
close
ballroom
it out.
B.
Great.
To close
Thanks.
out.
Thank you.